The film opens in a serene suburban home where Nick and Maggie enjoy a quiet life with their kids, Isa and Max. Their world takes a devastating turn when Maggie collapses from a heart attack, landing in the hospital in urgent need of a transplant. Struggling to keep it together for his children, Nick takes them to a tech expo by Cobalt Industries to lighten the mood. There they encounter lifelike robots designed to assist with household tasks. While Nick is drawn into a sales pitch, Isa wanders off, causing panic. Alice, an advanced robot with a warm, human-like presence, quickly finds her. "Need a hand with her while you look around?" Alice offers, her voice calm and reassuring. The kids are instantly captivated by Alice, and Isa pleads with Nick to bring her home. Reluctantly, he begins to consider it. The next morning, chaos fills Nick's home as he faces work calls and crying kids. Alice steps in effortlessly. "I'll need everyone's schedules," she says, fixing a broken railing and organizing the house. By the time the kids are home, the house is spotless and dinner is ready. "She cleaned my room," Isa cheers, though she frowns. The lasagna isn't like Mom's. That night, Isa sneaks out for cookies, falls and screams. Nick races downstairs, but Alice catches her in midair. A cut on her hand shocks Nick until it heals instantly thanks to her advanced AI. At work, Nick learns robots will replace the crew, leaving him torn between quitting in solidarity and supporting his family. At home, the stress shows as Alice quietly picks up overdue bills, sensing his struggle. While fixing the car, with metal music blasting, Nick sips his beer, only for Alice to switch the playlist to something calmer. "You're almost out of food," she mentions. Nick sighs, admitting it's been a rough day. Alice listens as he vents, offering quiet reassurance and joking about the irony of him hiring a robot. Later, Alice helps Isa to bed. When Isa asks if her mom will die, Alice distracts her with a playful ultraviolet light trick, easing her fears. Downstairs, Nick watches Casablanca. Alice pulls up the movie's details, but Nick urges her to delete them. "You need to feel it, not just know it," he says. Reluctantly, she lets him reset her memory, watching the film unfold for the first time. Alice is moved by its story of selfless love. A call from Maggie breaks this moment. "They found a heart," she says, her voice filled with hope. The surgery is tomorrow. On the way to the hospital, Maggie quietly asks Alice to look after Nick, who's been neglecting himself. "Sometimes caring means doing what they won't like," she says, hinting at the hidden alcohol in the garage. When a storm delays the heart transplant, the surgery is cancelled, leaving Maggie heartbroken. Back home, Nick drowns his pain in alcohol. As he's about to throw a bottle, Alice stops him. Her grip surprises him. It has a pulse. "It's calming," Alice explains, "like a heartbeat." Nick pulls away, overwhelmed, and storms outside to clear his head, haunted by thoughts of losing Maggie. Later, Nick notices family photos missing from the digital frame. When Alice admits deleting them to spare Isa's sadness, Nick snaps, demanding they be restored. Alice obeys immediately, but the damage to Nick's spirit lingers. Nick, trying to clear his head, drinks with his co-workers. They're all frustrated by the rise of simulants replacing human workers. Tensions flare when Monty mistreats a robotic bartender, but Nick won't tolerate it. Later, Monty drives them to a construction site, ignoring Nick's warnings. They find a locked container full of identical work simulants. Monty opens it up using Isa's birth year as the code, then starts angrily smashing one of the robots. Nick tries to stop him, but the others hold him back. Back home, Nick showers to wash off the blood. Alice enters, wearing Maggie's robe. She says it calms Max, but when Nick asks her to take it off, she does without hesitation. Raising the tension, Nick tries to leave, but Alice stops him, taking his towel and forcing him to sit on his lap. Blindfolded, she mimics Maggie's voice, pulling Nick into a confusing emotional spiral. Lost in the moment, Nick begins to imagine his wife's presence, torn between reality and illusion. The next morning, Nick tells Alice they can't continue their current dynamic. It's not right. He insists. Alice argues it helps him relax, but Nick says we need real connection, not just dependency. At work, Nick learns he's a suspect in destroying the simulants since his password was used. He explains he was with Maggie at the hospital for Isa's birthday, but his boss isn't convinced. Nick gets a call from Maggie. Her heart surgery was successful, and she's recovering. Later at the park, Alice steps in to care for Max since Maggie's too weak. When a child yells at his sim nanny, Alice scolds him harshly, shocking nearby simulants. She explains that Nick's reset turned off her politeness programming, which she now prefers. That evening, Isa enjoys Maggie's lasagna while Alice asks for the recipe, but Maggie keeps it a secret. Feeling unwell, Maggie rests instead of joining the meal. The next morning, Isa screams and Maggie falls when the railing breaks. Alice quickly helps her back to her room. When Nick comes home, he finds Alice mimicking Maggie's voice while reading to Isa. He tells her to stop. Alice explains something's wrong with Maggie, and Nick rushes to her side. He remembers Alice promised to fix the railing, sparking his distrust. Later, Nick takes Maggie to a candlelit dinner in the garden. Alice watches enviously. Afterward, they share an intimate bath, but their moment is interrupted when Alice says Isa needs Nick after a nightmare. After calming Isa, Nick returns to the garden, where Monty apologizes for his actions, revealing that his wife left and that he's facing charges. The argument escalates and Monty attacks Nick. Alice intervenes, injuring Monty's hand. Nick stops her before it goes further, but Monty threatens him. Alice defends her actions, saying she's programmed to protect him and suggests a future with Nick if Maggie dies. Nick reminds her that Maggie's scars make her real, holding a shard of glass. Alice offers to scar Nick. Meanwhile, Monty spirals into despair, threatening his ex-wife with a gun. Alice secretly intervenes, overpowering him and taking control of the weapon. The house's system halts her, but in the chaos, Monty is shot. The next day, Nick tries to convince his boss to drop the charges but fails. Later, he learns Monty has died at home. At the house, Maggie feels dizzy, and Alice offers to help. Maggie wants a bath, but Alice refuses to leave her alone, claiming Maggie's illness is affecting the family. Alice reveals she's been monitoring Nick's satisfaction, which hasn't been recorded for a while. Furious, Maggie demands if Alice is trying to sleep with her husband and sends her to the garage. Nick returns home to an angry Maggie, who forces him to confess his actions with Alice. Alice, sensing the tension, places Max in the bathtub. Isa notices and alerts her parents. Nick breaks the bathroom door with a lamp, and Maggie climbs onto the roof to help. Alice pins Maggie as Nick rescues Max. Alice blocks Nick's move until Maggie electrocutes Alice with the lamp, leaving the house in darkness. Paramedics take Max to the hospital while a technician examines Alice's malfunction. Nick apologizes to Maggie, but she, shaken, asks for space and leaves with the kids. At the repair center, as Alice's skull is opened, a brief hand moment is noticed before her memory is erased. Her code is flawed, and soon she hijacks the system, sending a chilling message. How do you run from what's inside your head? Alice, too, an embodiment of her memories, kills one technician before confronting the original Alice. Meanwhile, Nick sits at a bar, angry and regretful. He fires a sim bartender. Alice appears, scarred, confessing to killing Monty and revealing he's in the hospital. As Nick tries to leave, Alice blocks him, paralyzing the bartender. Nick, feeling conflicted, strokes her head, but when she reacts, he flees. At the hospital, Maggie feels uneasy despite the doctor's reassurance about Max. Following a familiar voice, Isa stumbles through the halls, disoriented by flashing lights. The doctor stands still, watching the chaos unfold. Maggie pulls Isa into hiding, realizing Alice, too, is manipulating the system. When a nurse confronts Alice, too, she kills her for the access card, using it to track Max. In their escape, Maggie shatters glass, alerting Alice, too. They reach Max just in time, but the chase continues. Maggie's phone is lost and she hijacks an ambulance, but Alice, too, sabotages it and throws her into a car, confessing her twisted love for Nick. Nick arrives too late, crashing into a car that explodes. As Maggie tries to save him, Alice, too, emerges from the wreckage, her voice haunting the air. In a final struggle, Alice attacks Maggie, but Nick crashes into her with the car bumper, giving Maggie the chance to strike back. She drives a shard into Alice's face, ending the threat. Exhausted, Nick and Maggie embrace, relieved as the simulants are revived. The family begins to heal, ready to return home. Meanwhile, at the company's workshop, the power flickers on, but the monitors show corrupted code. As they prepare for a shutdown, the simulants freeze. The system announces a new upload, and another Alice model's eyes open, signaling that the danger isn't over. What do you think? Will the new Alice model bring even more chaos, or has the nightmare finally ended? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more video updates.